yourself. If everyone will mute themselves, and then when you're ready to talk, unmute. That way the background noise and everything is we don't have any of that. It's easier to listen. All right. Get ready to go in a minute.
Sit outside the time with teachers. So that's where
he's got something going.
synchronous learning. Now, one of the things the Board of Education tasked me with in July, made this recommendation, was that we would bring in small cohorts.
All right, it's 7:01. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our City Council meeting tonight. We ask Councilmember Gibbons to please recite the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Liz. Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Ward,
Wallace, yeah.
You're muted.
Councilmember Ward,
He's trying
Still
to unmute
muted.
himself.
still muted.
Yeah, he gave you a thumbs up. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ward is in attendance. Councilmember Ward.
Here, yes.
Here.
We're here.
All right. Before we start, we have to ask City Attorney Hessel to read into the minutes the sunshine law requirements during a state of emergency for a meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Section 610.015 of the Missouri Sunshine Law provides that members of the City Council who are not physically present in the council chambers can participate and vote on all matters when an emergency exists, and the nature of the emergency must be stated in the minutes. I'd ask that the minutes reflect that unfortunately we are still in the state of emergency due to the coronavirus or COVID-19, and in keeping with the orders of the governor of the state of Missouri, as well as the county executive, the City Council is meeting remotely in order to protect themselves as well as the public health and safety of the general public. And I just ask again that the minutes reflect that.
Thank you, John. We'll go straight into our public hearings. We have two of them tonight. The first one is a request for a zoning code text amendment and site plan review for Commerce Bank at 300 North Kirkwood Road. Before we start, and Jonathan, our planning director, will emphasize this. This is not on the proposed building by development by Opus. That will come to us in a public hearing, most likely on October 1st. So this public hearing is not that building. This is for a text amendment and a site plan review for a new Commerce Bank building. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter anything into the record?
I would, Mayor. I'd offer as Exhibit 1 the affidavit of publication verifying that notice of this public hearing appeared in the St. Louis County. Exhibit 2 is an affidavit of publication verifying that notice of this public hearing appeared in the legal ledger. Exhibit 3 is a viewer map showing the property that is the subject of the public hearing as well as the unique property. Exhibit 4 is a list of property owners to whom notice of the hearing has been. Exhibit 5 is a report of the subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated August 5, 2020. And Exhibit 6 is a report of the Planning and Zoning Commission indicating that on August 5, the commission recommended approval of a request for zoning code amendment and for site plan review for the Commerce Bank property at 300 North Kirkwood Road. And Exhibit 7 is the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the council? Ross, unmute yourself, please. Yeah, no, that's all right.
My bad. That would be Planning and Development Services Director, Jonathan Raish.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. If you bear with me, I'm going to share my screen and bring up presentation. Let me know if you all see that. Can you all see the slide?
Not as it, there we go. There we go. Yes.
All right. Thank you. So this public hearing tonight, as the mayor mentioned, is for the property at 300 North Kirkwood Road. That's the current address. The site would be assigned a new address of 350 North Kirkwood if approved, but the current site is the current Commerce Bank location at 300 North Kirkwood Road, and this public hearing tonight is both related to their application for a zoning code text amendment and for site plan review for this site. There is a related request that would come at a later meeting for a commercial subdivision, but that is not the subject of the public hearing tonight. But I just wanted to mention that is we're talking about one of the lots of that subdivision as proposed. So here's an aerial photo of the site. The area outlined there in orange is the northern lot that we are discussing for the site plan. The text amendment obviously will be a text amendment to the whole zoning code. And the site plan is for the specific portion of the site here, about the northern third of the current Commerce property. The site is about, this portion of the site that's under discussion tonight is approximately 0.7 acres. And you see some photos here of the subject property on the top and some of the surrounding properties on the bottom. Some additional photos looking around at the surrounding properties. So the two items on the table tonight, as I mentioned, are the zoning text amendment request and the site plan review. So just as a refresher, the things to consider for the zoning text amendment is the proposed text amendment an appropriate way to regulate and promote the type of development desired by the city? Does it promote the public health, safety, and welfare? For the site plan review, does the proposed site plan meet the various site development standards, for example, buffering, landscaping, parking, lighting, etc., as stated in our code? And digging right into it, the zoning code text amendment, as applied by Commerce Bank, is related to section 510.8 subsection 2 of the zoning code, which is specifically related to street frontage occupation requirement in the B2 district. So just to explain that a little bit of what the requirement does before I go into the proposed language that's on the slide, there is this requirement was one that was put into place after a downtown master plan as a means to require that buildings occupy the street frontage in our downtown area. It creates a more pedestrian feel to have sites building centric rather than having a more suburban development pattern with parking lots and auto centric in the front of the building. So in our downtown, it was a part of the vision to focus on the buildings and on the pedestrian scale. And one way to do that was recommended by our consultant was to include this frontage occupation requirement, which, so as an example, if the property were 100 feet wide, in this specific case, it's broken down by the core downtown phase 1 and the outer downtown. Let me see if my next. So this slide shows that framework plan from the downtown plan. So inside that orange circle is phase 1, outside is phase 2. This subject site is in phase 2 of the downtown, and in the phase 2, the current frontage occupation requirement is 75%. So again, just as an example, if there was a 100-foot wide property, 75 feet of that would need to be occupied at the street front with a building along the street frontage, right? So we want the vast majority of the property to be occupied by a building. So going back to the proposal, this site is located in phase 2, as I mentioned, but it's also located on a B street, and just tapping into a lot of things that maybe people haven't thought about for a little while. But the downtown master plan also identified streets as A streets and B streets, with A streets having a more significant or requiring more significant focus on everything from architecture to frontage occupation is what's being discussed tonight, and just it should be more focused on this. The consultant really identified the fact that in downtown areas or in any development areas, you're going to have some spaces that accommodate vehicles, right? So you can't just have everything the prettiest it can be everywhere and not have any accommodation for things like deliveries and trash pickup, and that all has to occur somewhere, right? So there were some B-level streets that were identified that could accommodate those types of operations. And the Washington Avenue is on the north side of this proposal, and it is a B street. And so with Commerce's plan, their building, it occupies approximately 20% of the Washington Avenue frontage. It occupies more than 75%. I forget the exact number, but it's more than the 75% requirement on Kirkwood Road, which is an A street and a primary street, which we focus on. But on the Washington Avenue, it's roughly 20% building occupation. And so, in order to accommodate, to accommodate their proposal, and also to really align the requirement with some of the ideas of the downtown master plan, what's being proposed is adding this red text here into the requirement that would state, however, with respect to corner lots only, said minimum frontage occupation requirement shall not apply to downtown phase 2B streets, provided the required frontage occupation is met on the A street frontage of said corner lot. But in the event said corner lot fronts on 2 phase 2B streets, then said frontage occupancy requirement shall apply only to one such street frontage. So it's a mouthful, certainly, but the intent is what I mentioned, is that when there's a property, especially a corner property, that has 2 frontages, if one of those is on a B street, the idea is that we wouldn't force them to have that same level of frontage occupation on that property. I'll reference a little more about the subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission's discussion on that too, but that is the proposed text amendment. Moving on to the site plan, the proposed site plan. So you see that at the top of the slide, this is a revised site plan. There were a few items, and we just received this in the past couple of days. So it's still under review, but it's revised to address a couple items, a couple conditions from the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. But what you see here is, again, that northern approximately 0.7 acre portion of the current Commerce site, with Washington Avenue on the north, Kirkwood Road on the west, and then the current Commerce building would be south of this proposed building. And what's being proposed, you see, as I mentioned, the Commerce Bank building on the west portion of the lot. It's within the required 20 feet maximum setback in our district, also to bring that building to the street. It does meet the frontage occupation requirement along Kirkwood Road. They're proposing an approximate 3,800 square foot retail bank, 1-story building, maximum 22 feet tall. They have obviously behind the building, to the east of the building, is where they have their surface parking that's being proposed. They have 25 in this revised plan. There are 25 provided parking spaces, which exceeds the requirement of minimum 15 spaces required for the type of use. They also have 3 ATM. You can see the cursor, I don't know, but there are 3 ATMs near the eastern portion of the site, which all meet our minimum queue distance to allow proper queuing without backing up into internal or externally out of the site. And there are 2 proposed full access points from Washington Avenue on the north side that would allow customers both to access more easily the ATM and or the retail bank building. There is a 3rd access point proposed to the south, you see, and that would be a proposed cross access eastern drive along the whole eastern side of the property that would provide cross access to the other lot, with leading to whatever future development may happen there. But it is important, and you'll see both vehicular, and I'll go into more detail about pedestrian access, but the vehicular access and pedestrian access, there is a 5-foot sidewalk there on the eastern property line that would also provide circulation through the site and to the south. Sorry, I'll go back. One of the revisions here, actually the landscape plan will probably show it better. I apologize. So I have highlighted part of the reason for the revised plans was around the dumpster enclosure area. There were a couple trees by our code that were missing. So they revised the plan to include an additional canopy tree at the end of the parking row and an additional evergreen tree. They relocated a transformer to do this to make sure there's adequate room with utilities and the landscaping. In doing so, there was one space removed. So the plan, when it was at Planning and Zoning Commission, had 26 spaces. They're down to 25 now, but again, still in clear excess of the 15 that's required by code. So they made a revision there in the southeast corner near the dumpster enclosure, and then along the eastern property line as well. It was a discussion item that I'll mention later, but the subcommittee of this project, as well as the entire Planning and Zoning Commission, agreed that in lieu of providing the tree landscape buffer in this area, really because of the one recommendation of the downtown plan to provide increased pedestrian access, and especially mid-block where possible, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that in lieu of providing that tree landscape buffer on the east property line, that this 5-foot wide sidewalk be provided that would eventually, as I mentioned, cross into the site to the south and would connect Washington with Adams and allow additional pedestrian, safe pedestrian access in this area. Because of that request, there's not enough room in the site to accommodate trees safely, but they do have low-lying shrubs and other landscaping that would remain, as well as a 6-foot site-proof fence that's proposed and required for our buffering requirements, because the properties to the east are residentially zoned. I guess I showed it in the photos. The site to the east are occupied by YMCA property on the north side, and on the south side a multifamily condo development. So they do with the landscape plan, in addition to the revisions made to address some of the shortcomings that are now fulfilled. They provide the required 3 street trees along Kirkwood Road, the required 9 street trees along Washington. The street trees along Washington, you'll notice they are shifted on the inside of the sidewalk or on the private property side of the sidewalk due to overhead utility conflicts in the right of way, whereas Kirkwood Road, they are proposed towards the street in the tree lawn between the curb line and the building. There was also a recommendation on the Planning and Zoning Commission related to that to balance out the sidewalk. What was originally proposed was a 6-foot wide sidewalk and a 10-foot wide tree lawn. And the recommendation was to balance that and have an 8-foot tree lawn and an 8-foot wide sidewalk. So that's what's shown on these plans as well. So just some exhibits. Again, the Architectural Review Board will review the project when the applicant applies to that board if the project moves along. But these were just some exhibits provided to show. I guess I can go back here. One of the features I neglected to mention is on the southern side of the building. You see a significant plaza area. So that is where their main entry to the building is proposed to be, and it would connect to Kirkwood Road as well as to their parking area behind. And as shown here, you can kind of see offsite a little bit. It is envisioned and planned to connect to a future development on the south when that would happen. Obviously, we're not able to know what would happen there tonight, because that's not what's under review. But however, just know that it is planned that it would have the ability to be continued not only in the public right of way, but also onto the adjacent site if that when that southern site were to develop. And so the elevations, the south elevation is that main entrance that would open up onto that private plaza on their side and link to the public sidewalk along Kirkwood Road. View of some of the other proposed elevations. The east elevation that would be seen from their interior parking lots, north elevation along Washington. Give you an idea of the sense of scale as well. And I know this exhibit, I just keep everybody focused on the foreground, right? So this exhibit, this item tonight is, again, the 1-story, 22-foot tall, single-story retail bank on the northern portion. That's the building that's under review tonight. So I mentioned a few of these already, but just to give the council an idea of discussion that occurred at the Planning and Zoning Commission level. There's a lot of discussion, but this is just some of the highlights. As I mentioned, there was a preference for the public sidewalk along the eastern property line, and that does actually require a modification because of the fact that the trees cannot be there's not enough room to provide adequate growth area for trees in that same area if the sidewalk is installed. But as I mentioned, there would be a 6-foot tall site-proof fence in that area and some low-lying vegetation proposed. There's a recommendation included that would require the cross-access for vehicular and pedestrian movements along the eastern property line. It would be for vehicular, the vehicular traffic would not be for cut-through traffic. So there is a city ordinance that prohibits that, and it would be really to make more efficient circulation between the sites. And however, the pedestrian access would be for general public use, unrestricted, meaning it could be for somebody just going to get from Adams to Washington just as more efficient pedestrian use. The other item that was discussed quite a bit and went around was with the text amendment and the relation to the downtown master plan that I went through. And I should also probably note that the original request by the applicant was much more straightforward, I guess, so that the language that they originally proposed was just to state that the frontage occupation requirement would not be required on phase 2B streets, and they left it at that. There was a lot of discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission about maybe that being too broad of a exclusion, and so that they wanted to make sure they added made the language more restrictive, really, to really apply only to those corner lots. And then they were specific about that it would still meet the requirement on the other street, so that if there were any developments that were not corner lots and an interior lot in the middle of a block that was on a B street, we would still have the frontage occupation requirement for that development, right? That's really what came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just to give some examples of where that would apply as far as corner properties throughout. So, and I won't read them, but they're there. And if you have questions about it, feel free to ask. But some other things to note. So there is a recommended requirement for the 6-foot tall side-proof fence with Syntec or comparable material on the eastern property line. There is reference you'll see in the packet about street trees species with consultation with the city forester along Washington, specifically because of those utility conflicts. And the plan that I showed tonight was after consultation with the city forester. So that has been addressed. Also, the number 3 there, as I mentioned, the trees near the dumpster enclosure, that's been addressed with the plan that I showed tonight. So those revised plans we would provide and provide at a future meeting, and the legislation proposed would reflect those updated plan dates. Also, as I mentioned, the pedestrian sidewalk being required and the modification needing to accommodate that sidewalk, with the preference being for enhanced pedestrian circulation. And then there is, they still do need to provide a revised lighting plan, which I know is underway currently, just to make sure that the additional sidewalk is adequately lit by our code. So that is a requirement. And one other item, as I mentioned, because this proposal is for the northern site of the proposed 2-lot subdivision, and it does not dictate what happens on the southern lot. We did include a recommendation that if this site were to be approved and were to be developed, really that the current Commerce Bank building would need to be demolished prior to not occupancy, because they need to have time to actually do the change. I forget the exact timeline we put on it, but there was a certain time that they would have before that either the current building would need to be demolished so that or they could provide documentation that there's adequate parking for both uses, right? That's the concern. That's the reason we need to make sure is that that there's adequate parking if the building is going to be reused in some form, that it could be adapted in some way, and the site could be adapted in some way that would provide parking that meets our code. So this is obviously the public hearing tonight for both the text amendment and the site plan. Going forward, again, this is a pretty it's a pretty tough one to follow. I always have trouble myself. So it's timing issues on this are really pretty critical. But we have the public hearing for the text amendment site plan tonight. We also have the related subdivision request, which is on the table, and we will be timing those. The preliminary subdivision is approved by a resolution. The final is approved by ordinance, text amendment by ordinance, and the site plan by resolution. So the items that are approved by ordinance would obviously require 2 readings. So we will time those. Basically, just the key here is know that we'll be timing those so that all these matters would be up for your consideration with their final vote on the same night. Okay, so that everything kind of falls into place and is approved in proper order. So with that, that's all I have, and I'm available for questions. And the applicant does have representatives here tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, it was mentioned in the introduction, but the Planning and Zoning Commission, obviously they did recommend approval of this project at their vote meeting with a vote of 7-0 at the time that we had the meeting. So unanimously with the 7 members present. With that, I'm available for questions, and the applicant has representatives here as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do you know, does the applicant wish to state anything or just be available for questions from the council?
Earlier, they had indicated that they would just be available for questions.
Okay.
I think if Chris, if you want to make any statement, if you want to raise your hand and let me know. Otherwise, we'll just have them available for questions. Okay, we'll bring them on.
Hi, I'm Chris Marzeski with V3 Studios, and I've been working with Commerce Bank on the design of this proposed branch location. I don't have anything to add to Jonathan's presentation. He pretty much covered all the key elements of the site plan, so thank you for that, Jonathan. I did want to take the opportunity to thank the members of the City Council for reviewing our project. And we do have our civil engineer, landscape designers, and representatives from Commerce Bank on this call, and we're available to address any concerns or questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you very much. Before we go to City Council comments or questions, I just want to remind everyone, this, like any other public hearing, a matter is presented to the City Council for a first time. It is a chance for City Council to ask questions about the proposal. Some may ask a lot of questions, some may ask no questions. But tonight you will not hear from council members whether they're for a project or against it. That will come when it gets to us for our readings on it. Again, this is an opportunity just for questions to be answered. So I just wanted to say that before we got started. So tonight we will start with Councilmember Gibbons.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of questions, and Jonathan, maybe the first one is regarding the Section A 510.82, which I think is really confusing, actually. But the last line or last state part of it, then said frontage occupation requirement shall apply to only one such street. Shouldn't it be to A streets?
So that last statement, I agree with you. It is very confusing. So, and I think some of the reasons for that is, as I mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission was trying to be very specific that this exception only apply in very specific cases. So there's really 2 different scenarios in that revised statement. The first half addresses properties that have a frontage on an A street and a B street.
Mm-hmm.
The second half addresses projects that have frontage on 2 B streets. So that statement that you read, so it's just.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
That's why it doesn't say A street. Okay, I get it. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was hard to understand. I want to advocate for a couple of things. Being married to a Pittman School graduate. We're very concerned about the flagpole, and I understand, Chris, that it's going to be placed somewhere. And I appreciate that. But I also want to advocate for the fence that is there. There is a chain link fence that was original. It's black, painted black. It was original to Pittman. Apparently it's embedded in a limestone wall that's right now behind some bricks. I understand that it's apparently a city requirement. Is there a way of getting around that we can retain this fence? Jonathan, I guess that's to you.
Sure. So yeah, so the buffer requirement, you're right, it requires a site-proof fence when there's between non-residential and residential properties, and the properties these are zoned residentially. So you could, because of our current format of our code, you could recommend a modification to that requirement, I suppose. Just understanding that the purpose of the buffer requirement is to provide that visual screen, right, between the current chain link fence. Would not do that.
I mean, that's what's there now. Apparently nobody's unhappy with it now. So I think it should be modified. I don't know how that's done, but
Liz, that would happen when it comes to us for consideration at first reading. We can either have amendments or request substitute bills, et cetera. So when we have this for first reading is when that would come up.
okay, so everybody can drive by and take a look at it between now and then. I know that one of the things that every time you have a curb cut, I'm calling the entrances in and out, it's more dangerous for walkers and bikers. And this has two coming in off of Washington. They also have 10 parking spaces over what they need. Is there a way of making one curb cut into this from Washington so that it's a safer place for walkers and bikers?
I guess the two proposed, I might defer to them on why, and they might want to bring their civil, George Stock, I know there he just brought up. So their civil might be able to explain as to the reasoning behind their choice of the two access points. My assumption, so they wouldn't lose if one was eliminated. They wouldn't lose any parking spaces of that. I assume it has to do with preferred circulation or safer circulation related to the ATMs, and then trying to separate those two uses. But I will defer to Chris or George for the applicant.
That's correct, Jonathan. It's mainly to address the lengths that are required by the city for the ATM lanes. So there is a required length for cars to back up, and in order on our narrow site, in order to get that in and out access for those cars using the drive lane, having them navigate around the parking lot and re-exit on the existing east entrance. So that existing curb cut is on the east side of the plan. So that's the one we would keep. Pulling in off that site, pulling into the drive lane, and then navigating around the parking lot and coming back out of that east was complicated to work out. So we opted to make a more convenient curb cut further up so that they could pull right back out onto the street, sort of instead of going in the circuitous route in the parking lot.
Is there any pervious asphalt involved in this? We have a problem with water runoff in Kirkwood.
Yes, there is. This is George Stock.
Okay, good. I want to advocate for we have a great little organization that's done wonderful things for our town, 50 trees. They've planted over 500 trees. It's all voluntary and all funded by individuals, no taxpayers. And there's a tree that they want saved on the northwest corner. A couple years ago, there were utility boxes put there. Then just last year, some new light poles. and that tree survived all of those things, I think we need to make an effort to require that we save that tree.
So I will just jump in and say we have had our landscape designers review that. We heard that comment previously, and we were trying to figure out different ways of addressing this. With the current placement of the building, we're concerned that that tree would be damaged during construction of cutting the footings into the ground, cutting the root system of that tree. We even explored possibly moving that tree, but because of the type of tree it has a very long taproot, and it's not movable currently. So right now we are proposing that we do remove that tree. But I will add, we're adding, I think, 25 to 30 trees on the site that aren't currently there. So we're hoping that there's some exceptions there.
I guess you could just try to work around it. And if it dies, it dies. That's another thought. Let's see. Thanks for increasing the bike racks that you weren't required to do. That's awesome. I guess the only other question I have is for the applicant is what happens if your other project does not pass? Is this going to go forward no matter what?
Yes, this project will go forward no matter what.
Okay, those are all the questions that I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Sears, any questions?
I do not have questions. I would like to see the oak tree that we were just talking about saved. I've worked on that, as a volunteer on some of the years planting trees, and it would just be nice if we could accommodate that. I do appreciate that there will be a lot more trees on this property that will ameliorate some of the environmental aspects. And so we'll just see where that goes after you guys maybe take another look at it. Thanks.
Councilmember Dewey, any questions or comments? Yeah, unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
Unmute. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yep. I also am a member of 50 Trees and have been for many years and planted, and we're actually, I think, closer to 700 trees into the city of Kirkwood. We take care of them for 5 years, and after that, they're become the property of Kirkwood. So I also reiterate with Council Member Sears and Gibbons, let's get arborists and let's get our arborist and let's figure out the best possible way. And please make every effort that we save that tree. I'll leave it at that. I'm also looking at the different, from the DPZ, the master plan, in that an A at that part, which would be the other side of the lot, is retail. Where the bank will be is possible, is hopefully retail, possible retail. And I was looking through the packet and it says retail bank, and I'm not sure what that means. In what way are you retail at all?
Well, Commerce considers all their bank branches retail. The department within Commerce that deals with designing and maintaining and managing all the bank branches and where they go, they're called the retail group. So it's different than what the code means by retail.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, I do need to clarify. So the DPZ plan, so there was an earlier version had retail specific, but we clarified that with the consultant, and it is those streets are suggested and mandatory commercial, not retail.
Oh, okay.
So commercial can be office, commercial can be
okay.
Whether you say banking's retail or not retail banking, it may not be retail to you. But anyway, the plan is that commercial is required. So yeah.
Okay, that answers that then. Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure.
And then I also agree with Councilmember Gibbons, permeable parking, and I would ask a little more definite and well, definite. What I know you're thinking about it. What are you thinking? What is the plan?
Permeable parking?
Yes.
George, you can.
Yeah, I'm happy to. This is George Stock again. We actually have porous asphalt in the parking spaces, as well as 2 bioretention basins and or rain gardens on the site. So we will be providing volume reducing BMP's best management practices through the porous asphalt pavement of the parking spaces, as well as the bioretention in the landscape areas.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm also curious, how many parking places are there now, and are they full? Does Commerce Bank use all those parking places?
I would have to get you the exact number on what's there currently, but I do know that it is not fully utilized. Part of moving to a smaller location, a smaller footprint, is for that reason.
Correct. I've been banking at Commerce for many years, 30 years or something. So I was curious why so many parking places, and maybe the ones that are farther away from the bank could be used for a pollinator garden or something like that would also remediate runoff. Since we don't need those to be all parkings, I mean, it's great that you want to have more than what's actually required, but they're not needed. So perhaps they could be used better. And then the fencing, I definitely, the Simtech composite, I urge you to do that. It's a really much better fence than a vinyl, and a softer color, tan or beige or whatever, something like that, not a blaring white. And then I had one more question. And, the one door that's on the east side on the back, is that an employee door or is that a public door?
Yeah, that's a secure employee entrance.
Okay. That's what I figured. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Zimmer, anything?
Yes, just a few questions. On the design of the new building, it shows 3 ATMs, which I understand that's why there's 2 different curb cuts to officiate the flow of that traffic. Are those strictly ATMs there? Are there any drive-up facilities in that island?
So what Commerce is moving to, and what most banks are moving to, in particular on the coast right now, are called advanced ATMs. So they're getting rid of the tubeless drive-up ATM systems, or drive-up, cash systems, and instead they're moving to an advanced ATM that has a whole range of functions. They can interface, a customer can interface with an employee directly through that advanced ATM. They can do all the normal exchanges through that advanced ATM. So that replaces a typical drive-up lane.
Okay, so customers will be able to still communicate with employees inside the bank.
That's the plan, yes.
Okay, good, because I'm a customer myself, so I still want to be able to do that.
Right.
2 things I'd like to mention. I volunteered for 50 trees. I recommend saving the tree, keeping the fence, save that part of Kirkwood history. I guess the one thing that I'll throw out there is that the current Commerce Bank building was built maybe 40 years ago. And, in 40 years' time, what's banking going to look like? And are we going to be going down this road again? Will there be a need for a larger consolidated facility? That's the only thing that I want to point out, is that the building that's being proposed to be demolished is really not that old. And, it's a nice facility. I understand that the bank is not using all of it because, again, I'm a customer. but it's something to think about. You know, we talk about preserving our heritage in Kirkwood, and you know, and that building right now is part of that heritage, even though it's not very old. So just something to consider with this project. You know, how is it going to incorporate with the history of Kirkwood? So I would just like to ask that you keep that in mind as we go forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple questions for three for Jonathan, and then I'd like to ask a question of the applicant. Jonathan, of most concern to me is why are we predisposing that we need a throughway on the east side of that property when we haven't had received an application for changes to the other end of that block and the larger portion of the acreage? Wouldn't we be well advised just to look at this particular portion of the plan by itself?
Sure. So one, there is an active application that not the city council has seen, but it is an active application with the city for the southern portion. And regardless of that, cross access is a standard practice throughout, where many communities will require it between adjacent parcels so that users, regardless of what the sites are, users that may be visiting the bank, and then if it's a restaurant next door, they can, without going out onto Washington, Kirkwood, Adams, and go around it, the cross access, regardless of what use is there, is just a standard best practice to help efficiency and safety of traffic internally, and to not require everybody to go back onto the public road system. So that's the intent there. The cross act, or that drive aisle is there now, so it seems like I believe that's probably why the location was chosen. But that cross access for vehicles would be for that reason.
Okay. And then second, you know, some of the other council members have raised this. Are there any national standards that have been revised for the current banking habits and uses? I'm assuming
is that a question to me?
That's a question to you.
National banking standards. I am not.
No, not national banking, but parking and traffic standards for banks.
I see. So I'll have to look back on it. Our downtown parking regulations, I believe they were for the bank, were reduced when we went through and evaluated our parking code through the DPZ study. That I would have to look, Councilmember Ward, to see exactly what it was prior to the code. My guess is that in the previous version of our code, they would have been required more than 15 spaces. So I think that is the reduced version. And then for as far as the queuing length, it's a, you know, I think it's a, I have not heard any complaints or anything about it. It's a shortened, it's not as much of a queue length as required for our restaurants. It's something that we apply to the banks and dry cleaners and that. So I think because of the expanded use, or, you know, I think that's still, since they're not just the simple ATMs, I think the drive up lane with a teller length is probably pretty comparable to what they're proposing, since the function won't change too much.
Yeah, well, my assumption is that the number of employees in the facility are reduced, and of course the visits to the bank are reduced because of online banking being so popular now. That I'm just concerned that we may be requiring more surface parking there than necessary. I think it's worth a real good look to see what other communities throughout the country are doing with that. That might be a little farther down the road with bank redevelopment than we are. And I also I want to say, for the benefit of the newer council members, as a Pittman alum, you know, it's a site that we always go to and pass with some emotion. I do want to give Commerce Bank an attaboy. In 1978, when they purchased that lot from the district, they preserved many of the assets there. So the flagpole, which was erected in 1914, the perimeter wall. And sorry, Liz, but I believe that the original wall is all gone. It started to come apart from environmental impact from smog and everything else, and it dissolved, and they replaced that a number of years ago. So I don't believe there's any of the original wall. And for those who are concerned with trees, there used to be a huge oak that had a well around it that was right where the walk-up section is now, and they preserved that. So I think Commerce Bank has demonstrated their sensitivity to the concerns of the community, and I'm hopeful that they'll work with us on recognizing the historic nature of that site for many residents of Kirkwood.
Thank you. Councilmember Wertz, any questions or comments?
Just one quick kind of clarification that kind of echoes what everyone else has said, but when you got the, I guess, walkway, they conceded some of the trees that were in that original plan, correct? So was there any talk about, instead of the trees, maybe moving the trees to eat up some of the parking spaces? Yeah, I guess it seems to me that in order to make way for more pedestrian friendly access, we gave up some of the tree landscaping on the site plan instead of maybe another parking spot or two. Is that correct?
There was not any discussion about taking up more parking. The landscaping on the site does exceed the minimum requirements already. There's really not any additional space unless they were to take up more parking spaces. And while I understand, we do have parking minimums, we don't have parking maximums. So some communities do have that. We do not. I would guess, and they can clarify, but I would think if they didn't feel that there was a relevant reason to have those parking spaces available, whether it's for their use or whether for shared use in the future with potential other users, I think that I don't know that they would just pave it and develop it because they like the look of asphalt.
Right. Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you. Do we have any participants who wish to make a comment on the public hearing?
There is one, yes.
Okay.
Oh, they just put their hand down.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have, looks like no one wishing to make a comment on this. Do we have any further questions from the City Council? All right. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. The bill for the zoning code text amendment will be on our new business agenda for our next meeting, which is, when is our next meeting? September 17th. The site plan resolution will only be on the agenda if the bill passes second reading. So site plan review will not be on the agenda next meeting, but the bill for the zoning code text amendment will be. Thank you all. We will now move on to our second public hearing, which is a request for a special use permit for a physical fitness facility known as River North Strength in Suites A and B at 10505 Big Bend Boulevard. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
Would Mayor, I would offer as Exhibit 1 the affidavit of publication verifying notice of this public hearing appeared in St. Louis County. And Exhibit 2 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the legal ledger. Exhibit 3 is a viewer map showing the property that is the subject of the public hearing as well as surrounding properties within 300 feet. Exhibit 4 is a list of property owners to whom notice of this hearing has been sent. Exhibit 5 is a memorandum from Mr. Race, the Planning and Development Service Director, to the Planning and Zoning Commission in July 29, 2020, which the recommendation was to grant the special use permit for a physical fitness facility. Exhibit 6 is the report from the Planning and Zoning Commission dated August 6, 2020, which reads, after a presentation for a request for a special use permit for a physical fitness facility known as River North Strength in Suites A and B at 10505 Big Bend Boulevard, the commission recommended approval. Exhibit 7 is the Code of Ordinances in the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the City Council?
That would be Jonathan Reich.
Great. Welcome again, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, let me get back to my presentation here. Looks like. All right, are you all seeing?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a request for a special use permit for physical fitness facility. The subject site is 10505 Big Bend, located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Fillmore and Big Bend. Fillmore, which turns into Milwaukee on the south side of Big Bend. The site, approximately a half-acre site, which was approved, rezoned to B1 Neighborhood Business District in 2017, and at the same time approved for a site plan. And the building you see in the upper left is the new multi-tenant building, commercial building that was approved in 2017 with rezoning and site plan, and then built in 2018. Approximately 3,800 gross square foot in this building, shown originally as 4 tenant spaces, and it was constructed in compliance. So you see the subject building in the upper left-hand corner, some of the surrounding areas, the residential neighborhood on the upper right, to the north of the building, commercial across the street on the bottom left, and then a view on the bottom right looking down eastward down Big Bend. So this is the subject site. Again, a 3,800 square foot building, constructed as approved, 19 spaces, a parking lot with 19 parking spaces along Big Bend. This request is specific for approximately 1,100 square feet. It's about 2 tenant spaces, the eastern 2 tenant spaces of the proposed, or of the existing building, excuse me. And it is, again, for a physical fitness, a training facility in those suites A and B. The parking code for this matter is based on maximum occupancy of the space, and on a review by our building commissioner's office require a minimum of 4 parking spaces that would accommodate both the employees and customers. It is a small space. I know that seems like a small parking requirement, but it is a very, very small space for the use. And so that is per the maximum occupancy of the code, which requires 1 parking space for every 5 customers at maximum occupancy. And it does also, the applicants here, and they may choose to elaborate on this, but it does also line up with this specific business's model of more one-on-one type training. So the building, again, does have 19 spaces provided. So the exceeds the minimum 4 required, and then leaves plenty of excess, 15 excess spaces by our code requirement for the remaining 2 tenant spaces in this building. So as it was mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission did review this and did recommend approval by a vote of 7-0, subject to the conditions that the special use be specific to those the approximately 1,100 square feet of space in the building, and then that the fitness facility would comply with the city's parking requirements as well. There is no proposed exterior work or site work, so this is not a site plan, nothing to do with a site plan review. It is really just for a special use to occupy an existing commercial building. So with that, I am available for questions, and the applicant has representatives here as well.
Great, thank you. Again, does the applicant wish to, excuse me, make any comments, or just be available for questions? I see Ron Ham is on. So All right, well, then I will assume that just, Ron, you're there if there are any questions from the council. So we'll go into questions. Councilmember Gibbons, do you have anything? You're mute. Unmute yourself, Liz, please.
The only
Thank
thing I wondered is, are there bike racks at this building, or will the applicant put bike racks there?
There is a bike rack. It's in the southwest corner of the building, if I remember correctly, Ron. And I don't recall offhand how many bikes it accommodates, but it was included with the building.
Yes, it's on the southwest corner. You're correct. I think there's four bikes.
I don't have any other questions. I think it's exciting to have a facility like this coming in. So I wish the applicant best of luck.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Sears, anything?
No questions. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Dewey? Please unmute yourself, please. No.
I have a comment and a question. First, the comment, finally, someone in that building is great. My question is, will all the activities be inside? There will be nothing done, any sort of strengthening or activities outside?
That is, yeah, go on, I'm sorry. That is correct. It's all inside, nothing brought outside.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes, just one quick question, because it is a small space and there's obviously a limited number of parking. How many parking spaces do you all anticipate using at a peak time per se?
So the gentleman, he's from the East Coast. Him and his wife just got transferred here at the beginning of the year. So it's more a one-on-one training. So at the max, I think he has 3 stations set up. So there'd be one person at each station and he'd work through each one of those. So maybe 3 or 4 at the max.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, it's good to see someone going in here, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward, anything?
My questions have been asked.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Wertz, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
All right. Do we have anyone participating who wishes to make a comment? All right.
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, this public hearing is closed, and this item will be on our new business agenda on September 17th. Thank you. All right. We will go on to public comments portion of the meeting.
Yes, Your Honor. The public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the City Council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the City Council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the City Council to the Chief Administrative Officer or City Clerk if action is needed.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone wishing to make a comment this evening?
No hands raised.
All right. All right. Well, with that, we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no.
Aye.
Consent agenda passes. Move on to unfinished business, Bill 10843.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending and readopting the provisions of Appendix E, Personnel Rules and Regulations of the Kirkwood Code of Ordinances.
Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Yes.
Councilmember Sears?
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey? Councilmember
Councilmember
Dewey?
Dewey.
You're muted.
With that,
Yeah.
yes, sorry.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
All right, bill passes. Go to new business, Bill 10844.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance fixing and establishing the rate of taxation to be levied upon all real estate and certain tangible personal property in the city of Kirkwood, County of St. Louis, State of Missouri, for the year 2020. For the maintenance of the Kirkwood Public Parks, for the Police and Firemen's Pension Fund, for general government services, and for businesses in the Special Business District.
Okay, is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
All right, we've got Councilmember Ward and Dewey. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first.
I had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Ward, sorry.
I thought we might be going in order.
Yeah,
So let me start off by saying that the comments and that I'm going to make here in no way reflect negatively on the administration or the employees of the city. I think we have great people. I think they're honest and they attempt to do the best that they can for the residents of our community. The concern that I want to express at this point is not in the taking of the increase in taxes, because our residents approve that. It is just the nature of the conversation we had leading up to this. And the way we take into consideration our ongoing cost to operate this city. We knowingly, sometimes unwittingly, understate the cost of operating this city. We never talk about the cost of operation in the aggregate. We always talk about it segmented out in what is in front of us at this point. And some examples of those, we have fire engines now that cost $1 million a piece. The city administration just recently did take advantage of the rate increase to recognize the capital needs we have for trash trucks, $500,000 a pop. We got over $1.5 million in fire trucks. Those were never assigned in the budget for taxpayers to know and understand, but yet we hit them with an increase, which is justified. Our many of the cost increases we have in sanitation weren't due to anything we did. It's just the marketplace that determined that for us. But we have many other examples. Technology, we haven't done anything with the technology in the city for 20 years, 25 years. So that's a lifetime for technology as it changes. I just think we should be thinking about having open conversations with the residents of the community and what the true cost it is to operate this city. And you can't do that without knowing your indebtedness. So that's my comment.
all right. Any other questions or comments from council?
I have a quick
Councilmember Wertz?
I know this has come up lately because of the whole sanitation thing, but to Wallace just kind of rattled this in my head. If you look at neighboring communities, Kirkwood still has a lower tax rate than a lot of our neighboring communities, and yet we still are able to service our residents with far and beyond services that, some of our neighbors could only dream of providing their residents. So I think we have people who live here who expect a high standard of service, and I think we're doing that in a fiscally. So.
All right, very good.
Let me also add, one of the things that's happening here is, historically, with the exception of the time when we authorized bonds and retire those, we didn't compete with other political subdivisions. We've now started, we're at 7% on the average taxpayer's total tax load for property tax. But we've started down that slow, cumbersome road of competing with the school district, Kirkwood schools and special school district, and the other political subdivisions out there, unless we can discover some other source of revenue to replace that. But I just think we should have that conversation, let people understand that this is a meaningful change in how Kirkwood's going to do business going forward.
All right, thank you. All right, anything else? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 10845.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance fixing and establishing the rate of taxation to be levied upon all real estate and certain tangible personal property in the city of Kirkwood, County of St. Louis, state of Missouri for the year 2020 for the operation and maintenance of the Municipal Library District of Kirkwood.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? I'm just looking. Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 10846.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating funds in the amount of $91,359.92 from the debt service fund to the transfer to other funds account, and then transferring funds in the amount of $91,359.92 from the transfer to other funds account to the general fund.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments on this bill? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right. Bill passes first reading. Resolution 99, 2020.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing the reversal of voluntary reduction in general government services property tax rates.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Approval.
All right. Do you have that? We've got Councilmember Gibbons and Ward.
Okay.
All right. Any questions or comments on this resolution? All right. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wirtz.
Yes.
Resolution passes. All right. We'll go on to city council reports. Does anyone have any comments or reports they'd like to make tonight? Councilmember Ward.
I'd like to make a comment. I would like to encourage folks, if they haven't already done so, please reply to your census questionnaire. It's important to us locally. It's important to us on a statewide basis. We're losing state populations, which means we lose seats in the House, which means we don't get as much of our money back that we send to DC. And nobody likes that. So please, it's important. Make sure you get that done.
Thanks for that reminder. Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, just one thing. The police department has some signs locking your items at night. Just another friendly reminder to go around. I know someone that was a victim, and it's as easy as checking your equipment, your vehicles, your sheds, making sure they're locked up at night. Let's do everything that we can to make sure that this doesn't happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else from council? All right, seeing none, Chief Administrative Officer report.
Yes, so the city has received an application for liquor license to sell intoxicating liquor by the drink, plus Sunday, from the Pioneer Cafe, 210 North Kirkwood Road. And this application would require city council approval by a voice vote.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
So moved.
All right, and do we have a second? I didn't.
I got it from Kara.
Kara.
Okay.
I'll second.
Yeah, we've got Councilmember Zimmer and Wirtz, Laurie. All right, any questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Russ, I think you have one other item to mention, which is just very, very good news.
Yes, the city did receive word that we have received approximately $2.6 million in grant funding for our STPS projects. I'll let Bill describe the projects. He made the efforts to get these grants and work through East-West Gateway, and I think he should describe them.
Great.
Okay. Basically, we got two grants at this last funding round. One is for Kirkwood Road, and it's a mill and overlay on Kirkwood Road with ADA improvements from Swan down to Adams Avenue. So that'd be that's about a project that'll be about 2 years out. The other one is on Lindeman Avenue from Doughty Ferry to the northern city limits. It's another mill and overlay with ADA improvements, and we are going to look at some enhanced pedestrian crossings along that route also. So those are the two grants that we submitted this past cycle, and we're fortunate enough to get both of them in that cycle. So you'll be seeing those in the new budget quite a bit. So that's where we are.
Great.
Thank you, Bill, for
Well done.
for making those applications. And what was the total amount of the grants, Bill?
I don't have them in front of me, but I think it was like $2.6 million for both of the projects.
Okay. Yeah, it was 2.6 federal, 3.2 total amount of projects. So the city's contributing about 600,000 and getting a $3.2 million project.
Awesome.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
very
Bill,
much.
take Chris up to Pioneer and buy him a drink.
Great. Thank you, Bill and Chris, very
Both
much.
deserve it.
Very, very much. All right. Anything else, Russ?
No, that's all I have right now, Mayor.
City attorney report?
I can't follow that with all those.
All right. City clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor. I have a couple things to report on. First is the report of the September 2nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The following action took place. By a vote of 8-1, the commission recommended approval of a request to amend the zoning code by adding a definition for assisted living facility, adding assisted living facility as a special use permit in the B2 zoning district, and adding a parking rate for assisted living facility. By a vote of 7-2, the commission recommended approval of granting a special use permit for an assisted living facility and a preliminary development plan for a mixed use development in the B2 zoning district at 300 North Kirkwood Road as submitted by Opus Development. I also want to report on the upcoming public hearings that are scheduled. Based on the Planning and Zoning Commission report I just read, it is our intention to schedule both of those items for public hearings on October 1st. And then we have for October 22nd, which is rescheduled from August 27th, a request for a mixed use development in the B2 zoning district known as the James, formerly Kirkwood Flats, at 426 North Kirkwood Road. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Great. Thank you very much. Next meeting of the City Council, which will again be via Zoom, is 2 weeks from tonight, September 17th at 7 p.m. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
All right. Night, guys.
Great holiday weekend.
Yeah.